The iconic Roxy Theatre is a vision in hiding. The gates are boarded shut, a clear message to keep people out. There's an air of neglect that surrounds this empty building on the corner of Horwood Place and George Street in Parramatta. Most young people might remember it as a nightclub, but older locals recall its regal grandeur. Brian Powyer is the president of Parramatta and District Historical Society and easily recalls fond memories of the Roxy in its heyday.
When I moved into the Parramatta region during the 1960s, this is a place that I would come on many a weekend, and I would do my serious courting on such occasions. But more importantly, I guess that it was an avenue for cultural enrichment.
But before it was a nightclub, the Roxy was a sight to behold. Anthony Brown is the director at theatre company Ruby Productions. His foray into the world of drama and performance began right from his childhood, where theatre was a means of escape and the Roxy his refuge.
Growing up in Mount Druitt, Parramatta was the closest theatre we could go to. And when I was a young man, theatre was the only escape you could get away from any of your problems. And the closest was the Roxy. So me and my friend from school, we'd go to the Roxy in Parramatta and we'd see 5 movies in one day, one after the other. That's all we would do, is just watch movie after movie. So it does have an attachment to me, and it is important to me because it holds history and a time in my life where I had nothing, and it represented a place that you could go to where you could forget that you had nothing.
Inspired by Spanish architecture, the Roxy opened in 1930 and literally stopped traffic. Originally built as a movie theatre, commercial outlets such as Hoyt's and Greater Union soon became more popular venues, and it was converted into 3 smaller theatres. Over the years, it would then go on to be known as one of Sydney's most notorious nightclubs as the Roxy Hotel, and in mid-last year, closed its doors to the public. The owner is now proposing a complex behind the Roxy, with promises to preserve and refurbish the theatre. Community groups have jolted into action, crying out against having a high-rise building overshadowing the heritage-listed building. Leading the fight to save the Roxy is actress Claire McCann, who works closely with director Anthony Brown as the lead in Jane Eyre. Having grown up in Western Sydney, she noticed a lack of performance venues in her area. Claire wants to see the Roxy reopen for business.
Well, it's really funny because Parramatta Council, because I talk to them a lot through the whole Save the Roxy campaign, and they're really, really boosting this new thing about making Parramatta the next big city. And, the next big Sydney, like they want it to be the next big Sydney. And that's fantastic. Yes, Sydney, Australia is growing and Parramatta definitely could be. But if you look at Sydney, there are 10 big theatres there. And as you just, we're talking about, we only have 2 really in Western Sydney. And if you want to have a Parramatta as the next big city, you need another theatre. You need more than one. When you've got this beautiful venue like the Roxy, just sitting there empty, no one's using it.
There's a vision emerging of remaking the Roxy as an arts hub. The community have made it clear that the value of the Roxy lies not just in its past, but in its future.
Look, my ultimate vision for the Roxy to be, and not just, this is something I saw, but it was also something I saw that all the supporters on the Save the Roxy page were just crying out for, calling for, is they definitely want it reopened as a theatre. They want all the restaurants downstairs, they wanted a whole social thing, not just live theatre plays, but also musicals and also films, like classic films, those sort of interactive films, so like you could put on the Rocky Horror Show, you could put on Frozen, and you could have those interactive people you could put on those cult sort of following films like Labyrinth, and great old films.
The possibilities are endless. Full of a rich, meaningful past, the community is fighting hard to preserve its history and ensure its future. Meanwhile, the Roxy Theatre sits quietly, waiting for life to be breathed back into it. Jessica Yun reporting for Due West Sydney.